Twisted here with Open Sorcery, and today I'm going to go ahead and talk about Inkblots and how they can serve as a pictorial allegory for many people having spiritual experiences, phenomena happening, and all of them being legitimate potentially, even if they are different across various individuals. Now, before I get to that sort of idea, let me go ahead and talk about the Inkblot test in of itself and kind of like where it comes from very briefly. So it was developed by a psychologist named Herman Rorschach back in the early 1900s, so 20th century, right? And it's based on a game that he used to play with his friends back in 1800s, so 19th century, called Klexography. Now, Klexography in of itself, pretty much you go ahead and you take different little splotches of paint, you take a piece of paper, you fold it in half, and whatever sort of wacky images comes out of it, you go ahead and you try to guess what it is, whatever, and pretty much serves as the foundational basis for the Inkblot test in of itself, and has developed into quite an elaborate art form for what I've seen in my recent delving into it for, shits and giggles, pretty much. And pretty much since its inception, the Inkblot test, the Rorschach test, as it's dubbed, it's wavered between it being legit science and psychological testing method and dismissed as a parapsychology or pseudoscience. Now, the thing about the Inkblot test is there's a lot of variance, and truth be told, with it, you can't necessarily get a right or wrong answer in regards to it because it's very abstract and it's up for interpretation, such as when a person goes ahead and views an art piece and, however it speaks to them, they go ahead and express it. They share that, and that's the purpose of it, to make someone feel, to make someone think, to go ahead and get insight into themselves and to share that, and for others to get insight on, like, okay, how does this person view the world? View the intangible or less tangible, one can say. So, in this sort of case, many common tropes of things that people may see when it comes to looking at ink blots are like the more popular stereotypical ones that are shared are like butterflies, frogs, genitalia, male or female, and so on. Others, they may see stuff like dragons, or like praying mantis like beings that somebody can encounter on a psychedelic trip, tripping on DMT or, psilocybin mushrooms or something like that. And all in all, this one sort of thing that always sticks with me whenever dealing with, trying to say, see something from someone else's point of view, look at something from another person's shoes, or, just when it comes to people having varying experiences of a spiritual nature, or just about any situation in life, honestly, is that perception dictates our reality. So, for many of us, right, you could say that a clear sky tends to be blue. For others, it may be green, purple, pink, etc. There's many people out there who have color blindness. Many people who, may have some sort of deemed mental health disorder. They go ahead and they perceive things differently than us. And while yes, should we go ahead and say that, everybody who has a mental health disorder, that is diagnosed and such, that what they're seeing is actually legitimate in some sort of spiritual manner? No, not necessarily. But I think, there should be a increased level of understanding and tolerance when it comes to that sort of thing than the current stigma has upon people with those sorts of conditions than, is currently had. But not to go ahead and harp on that all too much. But in any case, yes, just generally speaking, when it comes to different spiritual, magical, occult, esoteric phenomena, if you go ahead and perform a rite or ritual with someone, or, you happen to see, like, an entity or being or something, and you guys happen to have different sorts of experiences of what you see or maybe what you hear or you smell, or you taste, or whatever extent you are aware, then it shouldn't be surprising, nor should you go ahead and say, oh, mine is correct, yours is wrong, and then the other person doesn't, vice versa, or nature. Or even if someone else doesn't necessarily experience all too much, that they go ahead and discount what you had experienced, or vice versa from, individuals who experience more than others. And I wanted to go ahead and utilize an example of at least a personal anecdote of kind of like how many people perceive something in, like, I will say the element of fire, right? So a lot of times the element of fire associated with the color red, fiery, passion, burning sensations, like it's aggressive, like all that, right? And to that, the archangel that is usually associated with the element of fire is Michael, based on the, Hermetic Order, Golden Dawn's modern interpretation of Michael. Something that I reference quite a bit, that's kind of been like switched or turned around. If you go ahead and check out the Foolish Fish video series, Esoteric Saturdays, where he talks about the LBRP and kind of like messing around with it, he found that in older sort of grimoires and texts that Michael may have been associated with air and such, but a lot. Oh yes, and also being I just started reading it because at the time of this recording, it was released a week prior. In the Ritual and Essential Grimoire book, that, like I said, just came out a week ago by Damien Eccles and his wife Lori Davis, there is the Angelic Energy Ritual where, Michael, is associated with the color red because of the element of fire. Those are two things that I can think of popular nature to go ahead and draw upon, of like, that's how, let's just say, most people associate the element of fire with, or the Archangel Michael, because of that correspondence. Now, for me, a lot of times, when doing things of my own sort of like practices or visualizations, say when I utilize what are known as the COSO rays, which you can actually go online and find a free PDF by a person named by Armand, which they have their own website. I forget their last name, but if you go ahead and check it out, it's honestly very niche, so it'll be easy to find and pop up on a search engine. But in any case, you go ahead and look it up, and you look up the Blu-ray and Archangel associated with the Blu-ray, whether it's in that particular system or just usually in general from a sort of new age spiritual sort of sense, is Archangel Michael. And that is usually how I tend to go ahead and view, Archangel Michael, a lot of times, with, once again, utilizing techniques of the COSO rays, or a lot of times in general. And the thing about it is that, like, when it comes to the element of fire, I guess some sort of real life rationale that I apply to it is that when it comes to fire, right, a lot of people will associate it once again with red or maybe orangish or something like that. But when you go through, you could say the layers, you may remember this from science class. When you go through the layers of like an actual flame, on the outmost outer layer, you can say it's red and orangish, then you kind of get like yellowish, then you get to white, and then finally at the core, where it's at its hottest, it's actually blue. And that is something that, stuck around with me for a while going ahead and, utilizing that blue COSO ray, that blue sort of rather intense flame and fire for different purposes, which in the COSO ray sort of system, Archangel Michael is utilized a lot of times for burning away negative energy and such. And at some point I may expound upon COSO rays in of themselves, but that's just kind of going ahead and sharing a personal anecdote about how many people may view things in a certain manner. But for me, in my own personal workings, I have my own specialized sort of thing, and I think that's a good enough example to go ahead and use for this particular segment. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Um, Across the travels in your journey, you'll likely go ahead and have many different variances and experiences, and all of that for you to draw upon yourself. So, wrap that up in a nice little bow. This is Twisted with the Opener Sorcery, and stay for frosty, Neguses. Peace.